Everyone in the camp longed for a visa to the United States, a veritable golden ticket that held the promise of a new life on American shores, far away from the violence and poverty of the home they no longer knew. Tro and Garcia won the lottery in the late 1990s. Duncan, who had never married his partner, was left behind. He spent another decade and a half in the camp, where he learned French, Ivory Coast's official language. Finally, in 2013, Duncan, still yearning for a ticket to America, felt it was safe enough to return home to Liberia. He moved into an apartment and got a job as a driver for a FedEx contractor. Louise had moved to the Dallas area, where Garcia had grown up as a promising student, a high school quarterback who won admission to a college in San Antonio. Then Duncan's luck seemed to change. One day the phone rang at the home of Wilfred Smallwood, the brother who had shared Duncan's tent in the refugee camp and who now lived in Phoenix. "I got my visa! I got my visa!" Duncan shouted, ecstatic. His life seemed to be moving again. He and Tro would be married when he arrived. His son thrilled with anticipation at the prospect of seeing his father once again. Tro helped him book his plane ticket from Monrovia through Brussels, then to Washington and on to Dallas. In the days before his plane left, a young woman named Marthaline Williams needed his help. Williams, the daughter of Duncan's landlord, was pregnant. She was also sick. Duncan, the landlord, and the landlord's son piled into a taxi with the young woman, bound for Monrovia's main hospital and the nation's largest Ebola ward. Duncan later said he believed she was miscarrying. He didn't know she had the virus that was raging through his country. But the hospital had no room. Like so many others who were suffering, Williams was turned away. They got back into the taxi, and Duncan carried her into her own apartment. Williams, her brother, and her father would all be dead within a few days. On September 19th, Duncan arrived at Monrovia's airport. Asked whether he had been in contact with anyone who had Ebola, Duncan said no. Whether his omission of the young pregnant woman was a lie, or whether he truly did not know she was sick, remains unclear. Either way, Duncan showed no signs of any disease. He boarded the plane. By the next day, after layovers in two of the world's busiest airports, he arrived in Dallas on United Airlines Flight 822. Tro was ecstatic. She drove Duncan home to their apartment in Vickery Meadows, a melting pot of a neighborhood in Dallas, a magnet for new arrivals from South and Central America, from sub-Saharan Africa, a mini United Nations deep in the heart of Texas. 5 days after he arrived, Duncan began to feel aches in his joints and shooting pains in his abdomen. He developed a fever. That night, at 10 p.m., Duncan drove the few miles to Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital. A nurse took his temperature, 103 degrees, well above normal, and asked whether he had traveled recently. Texas Presbyterian was one of the dozens of hospitals across the country that had made initial plans in the unlikely case an Ebola patient walked through its doors. Just a week before Duncan had arrived, the hospital had run drills to prepare for a patient who needed to be isolated. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, had issued an advisory to American hospitals on August 1st, urging those facilities to be alert for anyone complaining of fever, stomach pain, joint aches, vomiting, or diarrhea. The CDC issued a follow-up alert on September 4th. Duncan told the nurse he had just arrived from Africa, though he did not specify that he had been in West Africa. But the staff seemed to miss the message. A doctor prescribed Duncan antibiotics and sent him home to recover. Over the next 3 days, Duncan's condition worsened. By September 28th, he could no longer get out of bed, so weakened by the constant tremors and emissions that taxed his body.